let's do this as well because
Okay.
this is important.
Right? We have to have our own personal experience.
Because I don't know if we will ever get that.
Oh no, here you want Anne to take it?
All the panelists, please stand up and take
So
pictures. I know we could do this after also, but then it's
But
fun
we're not
to do
going
it
to. We're
before.
going to do it now. Okay, thank you. Great.
Thank you very much.
My name is Rochelle. Hi, Michelle. My name is Rachel. Rochelle. Yeah, great. Rochelle. I'm from USA. I am from California. I'm from Maine. From Maine?
So easy to forget them.
You guys have your mind blown. Whoa.
Shall we start? Shall we start?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know what time it is.
Please have
Oh.
Yeah, here we have our next session, Women in Technology, the pipeline discussion. Our lead speaker is Jamie Dalton, member Women's Tech Council, USA, and our panelists are Alison Brown, President and CEO, NAV Analysis Corporation, USA, and Shachi Ilde, Executive Director, Catalyst India. Then we have Rachel Levy from USA. Here our lead speaker, Jamie Dalton will take over the session.
Hi. Okay, great. Thank you. You can go ahead and get started. So, thank you, you guys, for coming. We were talking earlier, and we know that there's been several panels or discussions this week on women in technology, which has been great because I was here last year and there weren't as many. So to see the increase has been super cool. So I'm going to start talking just a little bit on women in technology, more of a pipeline discussion, meaning, people kind of, why are women why are we having a harder time getting women into the pipeline and keeping them into the pipeline when they're there? And then I'll turn it over to my panelists to share some of their experiences. There's voices. I don't know. So go ahead and flip it. All right. So the first thing that I just wanted to start out with was that 40%, 41%. So within the U.S., women make up almost 50% of the workforce. It's 49% of the workforce, and of that 49% of the workforce, we're just going to buzz in another talk at the same time. So that'll help us kind of focus on our work. Technology is amazing. You guys get two for the price of one today. You're welcome. So anyway, 41%. So of that 49% of women within the workforce, about 24% of them are within technology. And so within that specific statistic of those, the 24%, 41% of them will leave the tech industry compared to only 17% of men. So we kind of want to talk about why that's happening and what that looks like. So if you want to kind of like the way that we start about first perceptions, I just wanted to play a little video. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not. canteen just again, like the way that men and women have the same behavior, but we are perceived differently when executing on that behavior. So one of the reasons that we have a hard time keeping women within the technology fields is the kind of a machoism that exists within the field, and how do we compete without feeding ourselves into these perceptions of too aggressive, not dedicated if, for instance, you have a baby and you need to leave the workforce. So you can go ahead and skip to the next one. So there's a bunch of research studies. I'm going to read you several different studies that have taken place, and the conclusion of all of that is it's the climate, right? And so I kind of want to share a couple of examples of what that looks like. So the first one is, it says, according to recent research, from the Center of Talent Innovation, women are leaving because of a lack of career advancement, perceived bias in performance evaluations, and feeling isolated in a super competitive fraternity of arrogant nerds, as the study leader calls it. So the perceived bias wasn't all in their heads. The study also found women were less likely to be viewed as leadership material by senior management. So essentially, what we're competing for, a king of the nerds within our industry, and I love that term. My Facebook profile is, I don't know if you guys know Sheryl Sandberg's. They came out with it's a pink icon and it says "Be the Nerd." Do you guys know the story behind the "Be the Nerd"? Okay, it's amazing. I'm going to tell you. So there was this grandmother who was commenting on a comment within Facebook, and she was saying how she's always trying to tell her granddaughters, not to go out with don't marry the macho guy. You need to marry the nerd. That's where the future is. And and then she mentioned, she's like, somebody like Mark Zuckerberg. And so of course he was tagged in it and he was very flattered. So he actually came in and responded and he said, or what you should be telling your granddaughters is to be the nerd, right? And so this mentality was, you should go marry the nerd, and he can take care of you. And I really like the way that he turned that around and said, no, you should be the nerd. So that's my profile. So I love the fact that they referred to nerds in here, because I was like, yeah, I work with the nerds, like king of nerds. When you come in the morning, I don't know if you guys have what your environment is like, but they've got these weird gaming cards that I don't understand, and then they're talking about their online games, and then they're fighting over who's the best character, who has the best wizard, what kind of sword they got. I could take part, I'm sure. They're nerds. The only other time I ever make a comment is when I'm like overwhelmed and I'm like, wow, do you guys hear yourselves? Good for you. So it was just kind of talking about like this environment where we don't necessarily fit in. Some women absolutely jump in, but some of us don't. So that was one of them. The other one, another study comes up with, between the ages of 25 and 30, 41% of the young talent with credentials in STEM are female, but 52% of this talent drops out. The most important adjutant is the machoism that continues to permeate these work environments. 63% of women in science, engineering, and technology have experienced sexual harassment. So when I was at my previous company, I was doing business, so I worked for eBay, and I was doing business development to try to help some of our top clients optimize their business on our site by either building tools for them for their end-to-end operations or helping them to integrate with software that already existed. And we were out in, it was in Southern California, and I was visiting one of our top golf sellers. And we had spent the morning going through all of their operations, right? Through where the product came in the door, to where it was scanned, to how customer service operated, to how they started listing and integrating into our site, to how then they completed the sell and shipped the product out the door. And we spent a couple of hours in their boardroom talking about a few things, and then took them to lunch. And within this time, I had a junior associate with me. And he was a man, and of course we were in the golf industry, so everybody we met with was male. And it was taken until the end of lunch. There were 2 times within that 4-hour span that they made eye contact with me. So we were in their boardroom. This was an amazing experience. And they would look at my associate, and he was junior, and they would ask him a question. And of course I had the answer, so I would give the answer. And then they'd have another question and it'd go right back to him. But they wouldn't even look at me when I responded. It was just kind of this weird experience of almost not existing, but I was okay with it because I knew I had the answers. And it wasn't until we started partying in the parking lot after lunch, the fellow had stopped us and had asked, he had one more question. And I told my associate to go to the car and I'd handle it. And he wanted to know, he wanted to negotiate his pricing, and he wanted to come up with a contract. And he asked me, who do I work with for that? And it was this really special moment for me to be able to say, oh, here I am. It was time, and it was me. And so I just told him, I got a really big smile on my face, and I said, that would be me. And you could see kind of how his mind shifted, where he couldn't really grasp what I was doing there, or why it would be me, but he finally realized I was the person that he had to start working with. And I got in the car with my associate after, and I just asked him, I was like, did you notice this? And he told me, he was like, that's the weirdest experience I've ever had. He's like, they kept looking at me, and I didn't know what to tell them. And I was like, I know. But it was kind of this part, and this wasn't the first time, and it wasn't the last time, but I just remember this was an experience that really stood out as another one of those things in my career where I couldn't understand why I couldn't make contact, but I did, and they didn't get their contract because they were incredibly difficult to work with, and couldn't figure out how to work with us with what we needed. But it was an interesting experience just to be the only woman there, which is fine. We've all experienced that, but to not even have physical acknowledgement that you were there. So another reason why you might see that women would drop out of the pipeline. The other thing, another one that they talk about is they call it, so a Harvard Business School did a review, the Harvard Business Review did a study, and it notes that the prime time when women leave the tech industry is between the ages of 35 and 40, mid-career, right when they're in the thick of their childbearing years. Because they're feeling stalled in their careers and a lack of flexible work options, where developers can come in at 11 in the morning and leave at 4 in the afternoon as long as they get their work done, which is awesome. But when a mother does it, she is considered suspect. So even though, again, the behavior is the same, it's viewed differently. So it makes for a really tough environment for us to continue to remain equals in. There's another, so let me think. Can you move to the next slide? So the next portion of what we're running into within the environment is our unconscious gender bias, meaning that people don't mean to be gender biased, but it happens. And last year, my family and I were planning a trip to Disneyland, and we just went in February. And as we were trying to figure out times and dates to go, my brother and I actually work at the same company. And I'm in a more senior position than my brother. He works in marketing, and I'm in product development. But I have two brothers, and my mother and I were talking about how we're going to get time off and how we're going to make this happen. And I told her, not to worry about it. We can make this happen. We can get the time off. And she said, I know you can, but but it'll be harder for your brothers. We work at the same company, and my mother is very, very supportive. She's always been supportive of the career path that I've taken. But she didn't realize she had said it until I had relayed it back to her. For some reason, because my brothers were male, it would be harder for them and to get time off versus me, where I was a little bit more disposable, and I was a woman, so it was okay if I took time off, whereas they couldn't really afford to because they were more important to the company. So it was interesting. She didn't mean it that way, and I'm sure, but she didn't realize that she had this unconscious bias behind men and women. So I just wanted to read a couple of studies that have happened. I'm just gonna rattle off a couple of these. They're gonna be great. So if you've been in the industry, you'll totally get it, and if not, a lot of my friends who are here are entrepreneurs, and so sometimes I try to talk about what it's like to be working in a corporation versus working for yourself, and this is a little bit about what it's like. So There's a number of studies that have shown that identical job applications or resumes are evaluated differently based on whether they are labeled with a male or female name. When men and women read identical scripts containing entrepreneurial pitches or salary negotiations, they are both evaluated differently. Both men and women have been shown to have these biases. They are unconscious, but they exist. So here's a couple of studies. So the first one is, investors preferred entrepreneurial ventures pitched by a man than an identical pitch from a woman by a rate of 68 to 32% in a study conducted by Harvard Business School, Wharton, and MIT Sloan. Male narrated pitches were rated as more persuasive, logical, and fact-based than were the same pitches narrated by a female voice. Next, in a randomized double-blind study by Yale researchers, science faculty at 6 major institutions evaluated applications for a lab manager position. Applications randomly assigned a male name were rated as significantly more competent and hireable and offered a higher starting salary and more career mentoring compared to identical applications assigned a female name. So exact same resume. They just changed the name at the top. And if it had a male name on it, they were more likely to get the job and offered more than if it was a female name at the top. When men and women negotiated a job offer by reading identical scripts for a Harvard and CMU study, women who asked for a higher salary were rated as being more difficult to work with and less nice, but men were not perceived negatively for negotiating. Psychology faculty were sent CVs for an applicant, randomly assigned male or female name, and both men and women were significantly more likely to hire a male applicant than a female applicant with an identical record. So again, they're just doing, all that they're changing in all of these studies is a male name versus a female name. And you can see kind of the disparities that are happening. And then the last one, which is my favorite, personal favorite, and 248 performance reviews of high performers in tech, negative personality criticism, such as abrasive, strident, and irrational, showed up in 85% of reviews for women and just 2% of reviews for men. It is ridiculous to assume that 85% of women have personality problems and that only 2% of men do. And the reason that I love this is I have had this show up on more than one of my personal performance reviews, that I am abrasive. But I get these great reviews in the beginning, and the feedback that I get is abrasive. So every morning, you know, people always talk about, so I work on, my entire floor is a floor of men. And I'm the only woman within the department, which is great. It opens up a lot of cool dialogues, and different perspectives are shared, and it's awesome. People always talk about, you must have been a cheerleader in high school, you know, you must have been a dancer in high school, what did you do in college, type of a thing, right? But when I challenged, so I graduated, I should tell you, so I have a degree in IT. I graduated with honors with a degree in information technology. And my first job out of college was software development. And so I moved on now to the product management portion of that. So when we're trying to build a strategy for new development, if I get pushback from an engineer, you know, my first question is always, is it not possible, or you don't want to do it, right? Because it can be really, really hard to try to figure out a solution, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. So I will push on these. So I can be morning, cheerful, cheerleader, whatever it is that they want to label me with based on my appearance, but as soon as I start pushing back, I somehow become abrasive, where we can have a very hearty dialogue with other folks in the room, and it's, you know, kind of a bro conversation, and everybody goes to lunch, which is what happens at work anyway, right? Everybody goes to lunch, they all come back, and I'm still sitting at my desk. So it's just really interesting. I really liked that last one. So I've started a women in technology group at my company. And one thing that we have pushed the company to do, because we're not public anymore, so I work for Ancestry now. We were public and we went private, so we don't have to publish our gender statistics and our salary statistics like the other Silicon Valley companies are doing right now. So we push them internally to start looking at personal reviews in the beginning, right? Because they haven't done that before. So it's been interesting to kind of see what that data looks like, as they've never done something like this before. So When we get the results, we'll let you know. But several of us within on my steering committee have said that they have had this experience of having abrasive. The term, it's really abrasive, and I don't know why that word continues to come up for us, but they've all heard it or seen it. So apparently we're just a bunch of abrasive individuals within the workforce. So I just liked this one, that sorry, you are simply not the right man for the job. So an unconscious bias, but sometimes that happens. So you can go ahead and go to the next one. So this was just the other thing that I Googled assertive. I wanted an image for assertive so I could talk about it a little bit in here. And some of the first images that showed up, obviously you get a million search results on Google when you do it, but this is what I got. This was in the top 10 of the search results. Assertive, here's our man. Here's our man who's assertive. Good for him. He's strong, he's authoritative, good for him. Be assertive, get what you want. And then I didn't even search for like men versus women assertive. I just searched for assertive. And then when you see an assertive woman, this was the image that came up. Google, it's an algorithm, so good for them. So I'll skip the portion on that to give my panel members some other an opportunity to talk. If you can skip to the next one real quick. For me, Garçon, por favor. Thank you. So we just want to talk about the leaky pipeline issue for just a minute, and then I think I'll turn some time over to you because you have a perfect example. But the leaky pipeline, what this is talking about is the pipeline discussion really is why can't we get more women into STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And there's a lot of questions behind. That we had a peak in women engineers graduating in the early 80s. It was about 38%. I think you would know this. 38% of graduates were female, and we've dropped back down to about 38%. So they're really trying to figure out. So when companies are hiring, they're saying they're trying to hire women, but they can't find any out there. And so as we try to fill our pipeline with women, we're seeing what we call a trap door experience, which is they come into the pipeline and you see them drop out. And so as they continue to drop out, so it can be trap door or it can be this leaky pipeline, by the time you get to the end of your pipeline, you have very few females in leadership and mentoring roles. And so we want to kind of talk about how we solve that. And at work, again, we didn't have a mentoring program, right? So I started a mentoring program for the entire company. Not part of my job description, but I thought it was very, very important. And the one thing that I think is interesting is I don't know that, and I'd love to hear opinions as we open up the floor to dialogue or as you guys chat, is the importance of does it have to be a female mentor or role model, or can it be a male? And that's one thing that I tested with our mentoring program overall is can we pair male and female, and do you get the same value out of it? And so depending on the area, so we have a lot of data scientists that work for us and scientists overall for our DNA portion, and some of the scientists really wanted a female to be their mentor because they wanted to see somebody who had gone through the entire pipeline and have successfully been brought to the top of their careers. Whereas some other folks were like, I just want a mentor. And obviously men are more than half the workforce, and so we need them on board with what we're doing. So as we kind of talk about like what that looks like or what causes folks to drop out, like essentially there's a little bit more here, but I'll wrap it up and just kind of, as we talk about it, I just really kind of wanted to fill us first full of statistics. And then I really want to just kind of hear from folks on what your experience has been like. What have you done that's worked to keep females within your workforce? And then, what do you know about females who have dropped out and why, which I think is a really great segue for our next speaker, Sachi.
Thank you very much, Jami. And it was nice listening to all the statistics that you presented. And I lead Catalyst in India, and Catalyst is a research organization trying to understand what it takes to hire, develop, retain women in the workforce. And we do have a lot of statistics on the women in the tech sector, but I think it will really get too much if we start throwing some more numbers. And believe me, it's not very different from what she said. But I would like to start by saying some things which are different in India, especially in the tech sector, where you find at the entry level, in many organizations, the percentage of women is 50% or more. So the challenge is not about finding women in technology. You do have enough and more women available to get into the STEM roles. Interestingly, in India, they also start at the same salary levels, which is not so in many other countries. And the reason for that is the way we do hiring. In India, we typically do hiring from campuses, which is going to the respective colleges and hiring men and women for the same role. But what happens is, over a period of time, the kind of roles that are assigned or the kind of projects that are given to women and the projects that are given to men, they start differing, and that is where the challenges start emerging. You start seeing that women start getting more of staff roles, men start getting more of high potential, what we call as hot jobs or the mission critical jobs, which will give them high visibility, maybe an on-site opportunity, which is very important in many organizations in India for you to go to the next level. And that is where all kinds of gaps starts emerging. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, in India, most women also start thinking of planning to have their families around the same time. And that is when the, I wish you put that leaky pipeline picture, it's okay. But that's where the leaky pipeline emerges in India. To add to that, when the woman comes back to the work after her maternity leave, luckily today, as per our recent research report, Intention to Impact, we saw that a lot of organizations have very favorable policies which get women back to the workforce post their maternity leave. There are many processes which help them integrate into the workforce and so on and so forth. But where they fall short is getting them again the right job or getting them the visibility that is required. These are softer issues which cannot be really very well captured in the HR processes, and hence, again, you start seeing that women don't actually drop off. They move from the IT sector. Here is where I will share my personal story. I am an IT graduate by education. I have studied computer science. I used to code in 9 languages, but I chose to sell the IT products. So I was in sales stream during the first few years of my career, moved on to telecom, did extremely well. I think the first 9 years, if I think back, every year I was awarded in one way or the other. Either I was sent abroad or I was given extra incentives and so on and so forth. But while my career was taking off in this fashion in one end where the numbers were coming in place and the revenues were coming in, the reinforcements that I kept continuously getting was, don't you feel awkward that you're the only woman in the team? The other message was, oh my God, why doesn't your husband ask you to stay back? Maybe you're so handful, that's why they're sending you to work. This was the reinforcement that I used to get. And how do you think that made me feel? So finally, when I went on a mat leave and joined back, to my big surprise, my role didn't exist. Of course, they could not say that you can no longer work in this company, or you're going to be asked to go, or you're demoted, or something like that. I had the same designation, but I was no longer in sales or marketing, which were my top priorities, and that's where I had built my career till then. I was subtly pushed into customer service. Obviously, I don't know how many of you are in sales here, but if a person is in sales, the person starts fidgeting a lot if the person has to sit back and do customer service for a long time. Thank you. So with all the reinforcements of being the only person, why are you doing sales? It started hitting me that, am I doing something really wrong? And mind you, I quit the job and moved into HR. Yes. Of course, I did. It took me a long time to understand the concepts of HR and get into the depth of HR, because in HR I was an outcast because I didn't have my degree in HR. In sales, I'm an outcast because I'm the only person. In HR, I'm the outcast because I didn't have my degree there. Anyway, after long persuasion, HR accepted me, and my career has taken various turns, and today I'm happily again back into my sales role, business development role, along with other things which I'm most happy about. But this is what happens to a lot of women in IT. Today, when we look back in the IT sector, you still see a lot of women at the entry level, but as you start seeing the pyramid, you start seeing falling numbers in the women. One of the reasons is there are no many role models. When you don't have role models, basically when you don't have other women to look up to and say, hey, she did it, I can also do it, that's missing. Then that becomes challenging. Second thing is, she touched upon mentoring program. While it is very essential to have mentors, again, Catalyst research, what we have seen is that women have a lot of mentors, but they don't have sponsors. Sponsors are essentially people who will talk on behalf of you when you are not there, vouch for you, make path for you, or introduce you to those people who will help you move to the next level. The research showed that men have more sponsors while women are mentored to death. That has to change. You need to have more role models, you need to have more sponsors. And last thing is, we have seen that when leaders have been intentional in their approach to getting more women in the pipeline, things have changed. There are a number of examples, number of organizations where leaders have taken it on themselves to do the resume study or the promotion study for men and women, and have pushed back when there have not been diverse slates. That's when things start moving, and I would urge all organizations to start looking towards their numbers, not only at the overall, what is the percentage of men in the organization and women in the organization, but at every level. And not only look at percentages of women as why so many are not there, look at deeply into things like, for a particular promotion, how much time do men spend in the same role versus how much time women are spending in the same role. And that's when things will start changing. We don't have the dearth of knowledgeable women. What we need is more intentional leaders. Thank you. I would now pass it on to my other panelist.
If you could bring my charts up. Thank you. Great. Well, we didn't coordinate, but I think we have a common theme and also some complementary remarks to make about filling the pipeline. I can certainly resonate with some of the experiences Jamie's had in the technical field. It's almost, mirror image of some of my personal experiences as an engineer and leading, a high-tech organization. So what I wanted to address in the few minutes I have to talk is actually going earlier into how do we get more girls interested in science and engineering and filling the pipeline, at a very, to encourage them to come into this career at a very young age. If you can go to the next chart. So one of the, there's been some extensive studies that were done in the United States on what's called science, technology, engineering, and math. And in particular, looking at how do you encourage not just girls, but also girls and boys to enter this field? Because unfortunately, in the United States, we're seeing less and less people wanting to get into these high-tech careers. And as part of that, they've also been looking at demographics, different areas, different genders, and how gender stereotypes are affecting young people's perception of a career and their willingness to enter it. So one of the most interesting things that came out of the study is that the most effect that was having on girls' performance in some of the science fields in the schools was actually negative stereotyping. And so they were doing some studies and some analysis, and they were finding when girls were in a nurturing environment, they were encouraged, they were being told, yes, you can do this, this is something that you have a talent or an ability for. They did very, very well in the scholastic tests. It was interesting, there was just yesterday in the Washington Post, it came out results of another study. There was a first national test in science and technology that was done in the US. Girls for the first year outperformed boys. So where there is encouragement, where there is, where girls are basically being told that they have role models, they can move into the career, they're doing very, very well. Where there is the counter, and you're being told, oh, you don't want to take math or you don't want to take physics, you know, that's not really a girl thing, they don't do well at all. So it has a huge effect on their ability. The other thing that's interesting is that girls hold themselves to a higher standard than boys do. In other words, they believe they have to be exceptional to succeed. So there were some studies that were done that asked young men, young boys, and they said, well, to be exceptional in this field, what is required? And girls were statistically, noticeably holding themselves to a higher standard and saying, we have to be much, much better than the boys thought they had to be successful in this career field. The other thing is that the gender differences in self-confidence that came from this study, they start in the US in middle school. So it's at a very young age. You know, starting 11, 12 is where these stereotypes are having noticeable effect and either encouraging or discouraging girls to go into the science and technologies. So next chart. So this is just showing some of the statistics, and it really just shows, these were blind studies that were done in some different environments. And you can see that where there was a stereotype threat, women scored huge, you know, there's this huge disparity between women and men. And this is basically where they're seeing that they're being, you know, that they're going to be perceived as being nerdy, not cool, not entering, you know, a field that is encouraging for young girls. And then the other statistics shown here are basically say when they grade their own performance, and if they're being told that men are better at a task than girls, they give themselves a higher standard. They think they have to be even better. They have to achieve at a higher level to have a chance to enter this career. If you flip it around, then it actually evens out, and they're encouraged to enter. So the message that came from this study is that the schools basically have to be encouraging. You know, teachers that basically, you know, I've been very fortunate to have some very good teachers. My friends have said, yeah, when I went into, you know, biology, my biology teacher said, oh, that's not a girls' class. What are you doing here? You know, that type of thing. That is incredibly negative for getting women, young women, to enter the field. So we need training, actually, not just for the young girls and mentoring and encouragement, also for the trainers, for the teachers, because they have to understand what effect they're having on young women who may be able to achieve at very high levels in this field if they are encouraged. Next chart. So going back to 1992, I can remember this, I don't know how many of you did. There was actually a bit of a furor. In a way, it was a negative event that got some attention paid, so it was good because people started talking about the problem. Mattel came out with a talking Barbie, high-tech toy. And Barbie randomly said words, phrases that were considered to be teen appropriate for girls. And one of them was, math class is tough. And this actually got a huge amount of negative publicity to Mattel, and they said they eventually took it off because this is such a terrible message it's giving to girls. You know that it's not cool. You know, math class is tough. If you're doing well at it, it's not a good. It's not a feminine ideal. So one of the things I wanted to show has really changed is in America we have Super Bowl. Is a huge advertising time. Companies pay millions of dollars to put ads up during the Super Bowl. It's a big event in the United States. And a couple of years ago, Intuit put out a competition, nationwide competition for small businesses, and the prize was a Super Bowl ad. And what they did is they asked people to make, you know, just tell a brief story about their product, their company, and then they had votes. You voted. It was based on the most number of votes, who won the prize. And the company that won the prize is this one on the right, which is Goldilocks. And this is a company that is designing gender-specific toys for girls, but they're focused on technology. It's teaching spatial reasoning, it's teaching problem solving, using tools, and it's providing, you know, role models as girls as an inventor. You know, the one on the left, the little parachute. You put the parachute on, and the girl parachutes out, and you can see her float down. And so what they're doing here is this in my mind is exactly what is needed, because this is the positive stereotype. You know, any girls who are playing with these toys are getting a message: this is cool, this is fun, this is, I can do this. Whereas, you know, back in 1992, you're being told math is tough. You know, wrong message, completely the wrong message. So next chart. So anyway, so ways to increase interest in STEMs by girls, just a summary. First, I think it's so important is create environment that support girls and women's achievement and promote interest in science and engineering. The next is to outreach on what science and engineers actually do and how they contribute to society, to encourage girls to enter this, not just because it's nerdy, it's geeky, you're going to earn a lot of money. You can actually make a real contribution in this field. It's an area that is ripe for growth. There's so many new exciting technologies that are coming on. It's exciting, it's thrilling, it's fun, it's challenging, and many of the new careers that are starting, you know, in medicine, genetic engineering. I'm a rocket scientist, and there's still fun stuff that gets done there, are very, very aligned with women's skills for problem solving. The STEM events there's a huge push in the United States to network women in engineering and women in sciences to girls in schools. They're very, very important. And also teaching students and teachers about stereotyping. And what's interesting, this link here, I'll leave the slides anyway to share them, but this is a study. This is actually something you can go online. And you know, we heard from Jamie talking about stereotyping, negative. Harvard now has a bias test. So as an organization, you can go online, it's free, and you can go through and ask questions and so forth. It will come out and it will score your environment and whether whether there are negative stereotypes, which many companies may not perceive they're having, but they're there in many cases. Next chart. Yeah. And one of the other tools, I think, is social media. I mean, this is a site that came out as a very negative event where Isis, who's the young woman who's pictured in the middle, she was featured in a recruiting ad for a company. And she started getting all of this negative blog that was being posted against the ad, saying, this is ridiculous, she's far too attractive, she can't be an engineer, she's too pretty, she's a model. How stupid do you think we are that we would think she's an engineer and want to come work for your company? And she's a very, very talented engineer. So as a result of that, women all over the world started posting pictures of themselves, I look like an engineer. Yeah, exactly. And this is the message that we need to be telling our young women. We need to use social media, we need to get it out, we need to break these stereotypes and show them you can be beautiful and be an engineer. You can be wearing a boiler suit and you can be an engineer. You know, it's not what you're dressing, it's not your environment, it's your talent, it's your creativity and how you express yourself in this career. So, thank you.
So hi everyone, my name is Rochelle Davi. I live in California, in Palo Alto, and I'm the founder of a startup that's creating a product that focuses on for women. So basically I came here and I wanted to talk about my experience as a tech entrepreneur who's building a product. I'm a woman and I'm also building a product that is for women. So as an entrepreneur, when I go out and I try to speak to an investor about my company, the first thing a lot of them tell me is, well, I know this very good women VC, I can introduce you to her, and they try to refer me to women who they think might be more interested in that type of venture. So what I wanted to talk about today, the topic of my presentation is bug fixing, making the world a more user-friendly place for women. So if you see in the business world, they're always talking about design thinking, you know, bug fixing, user experience. So I really think that the world is not a user-friendly place for women. And what happened is maybe in the 70s or 100 years ago, all the way in which it's unfair for women was invisible. But because we've made so much progress with first wave feminism, now a lot of these issues that women experience have become, invisible. She was talking, she goes to a business meeting and she's talking to a customer, and the customer is giving attention to a man who's present. There's really no way to quantify and measure. When you talk about your experience, she said it's the climate. A lot of people, they say it's in your head. It's not really happening when it's something that you experience, a lot of time. So, so basically, so as a woman, I don't have a technical background. I'm not a techie, but I'm trying to solve problems that women experience. Okay, and I think that one of the consequences that happen when women do not stay in tech as engineers, that a lot of the problem that women experience, they go unsolved. An example is when Apple released their app, a health app, one of the most important feature from which all humanity depends, which is an app that can track a menstrual cycle, it was not included when 50% of the world population, it's very important for women, very important for fertility and all these things. And I think it might be if and later it turned out that they didn't have a woman on that team. It might be if a woman had been on that team, that problem would have been taken care of. And there's lots of problems that women experience that don't get taken care of. So a lot of time when I talk to an investor, my company is called Girl Friendly, and we're building a mobile application and products are specifically for women. And a man who's an investor, he cannot relate with my experience. So, for example, one of the products we're developing a travel portal that's exclusively for women. So a lot of women, when we're traveling, in the back of your head, if I want to go to Asia or I want to go to Africa, I'm thinking, I might get hurt over there. When I go online and I try to book a hotel, even if I book a 4- or 5-star hotel, I get there, I can go into a room, there's going to be maybe someone who comes in, a concierge or someone who makes a sexist comment towards me, and I report it, and they say, you cannot really know if it happened. So one of the products we're developing is a travel portal. It's called Girl Friendly Travel. On it, we only list hotels that are safe for women. So they're Girl Friendly certified. So part of the process is we search hotel, we scrape the reviews online, and we find reviews that have negative, women who talk about their negative experience. So we don't give these hotels, we don't list them on our portal. So the next step is we go to the hotel and we tell them, okay, we have these guidelines when you have a woman, if you're going to Kenya or if you're going to India, where there's been so much bad press about female travelers that they get, raped, Even your relative or family is always saying, well, you're gonna go there, you have to be very, very careful, because it's dangerous. So what we do, we train the hotel on how to treat a woman who's staying there. We make sure that the concierge, the person who's helping you, treats you in a very respectful way. If you have a problem with a taxi who's dropping you off, they know how to manage it. So this is one example. Another invisible layer of unfairness is when it comes to compensation. Women, we make 70 cents on the dollar compared to men. Yet, when you go to a store, you're paying exactly the same amount for whatever product you're purchasing. So we've developed an application. It's called Girl Friendly. It's about making girlfriends. It's a social app for women where you can keep in touch with all your female friends. But there's this explosion of social apps for dating. So this is a social app where you can meet new girls for friendship. So let's say you just moved to New York City, you're going through a divorce, you have breast cancer, you want to find someone to work out with. On this app, very much like Tinder experience, you can meet girls near you and connect with them for friendship, business networking. So it's a social app for girls, but we've also developed other products. We're focused on developing a discount and coupon program that's for women. So if I want a discount and I think I should pay less, it's not because I think I deserve a handout or special treatment because I'm a woman, but you have to correct how it's unfair. It's I want a discount because I want to make that invisible layer visible. And those type of certification, you want to move them to maybe transportation, hotel, evaluate how, if I want to stay at a Marriott hotel and 80% of their employees is men compared to 20%, 80%, the female employees make less money than men. I think if people become aware of the problem, I think collectively women, we can move a direction, where there's change, and so for me, it's very amazing to be in this event where there's a selected group of women, and women are being so much more vocal about women issues, and it's really accelerating. Even what she was saying, how Silicon Valley now, they have published the salary gap between men and women, not only, even private companies, Tesla is a technology car making company. Elon Musk said he's going to correct and make sure that men and women are compensated in the same way. So I think the more vocal you are about it, the more it's likely to change. And if you've noticed, there's even that Pantene ad she showed in the beginning. Brands now, whether it's cosmetic, fashion, car, travel, they're really leveraging the conversation about feminism and women empowerment to try to connect with the user. So I think it's a really good time for that. So really my topic wasn't, it's really about how women, I don't think women only have to solve women problem, but the less women we have in tech, the less women problem are gonna be solved. So basically that was the topic of my talk. Yeah. So if there's any questions.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
First is to, sorry, okay. First, I would like to ask a question to Ms. Irde. Hi. Congratulations for being a great sales lady.
Thank you.
Yes. Mine's very simple question is that, see, women are supposed to be very more communicative than men, right? More expressive than men, as they say. But when it comes to sales job, why women are not promoted or not encouraged to take sales job? Even families don't want to encourage ladies of their homes to take sales job. Number one, and even in the organization as you faced, they faced gender bias. Like if a sales job, they won't give you a much better or rich experience. Why is that? Is it gender bias, or is it a societal thing, or what are the reasons?
So there are a number of things which come to play here. Okay, first of all, the first part which you said, the generalization, it's not really true. Different women are different, just like different men are different.
Yes.
So I'm just going to skip that part of it. Yeah. When it comes to sales jobs, again, one has to look at industries that we are operating in today. Okay. I'm going to be talking more from an India perspective because that is where majority of my career has happened. Safety has been an issue for women on road. Whenever women are on road, safety has been an issue. And more so in industries where women have to travel to the remote locations or the rural belt and those kind of areas. And hence the hesitation has been there to not allow women to go both from the families and from the organizations because of primarily safety reasons. What is good is now there are organizations which have incentivized their distribution channel to set up hygiene and safe places along the roads to ensure that women can get a good career in sales as well. So things are changing, but not as fast as we would like to. Even at the family level and the social fabric today, things are changing where families have understood and acknowledged and accepted that women do make excellent salespeople. And in fact, if you reach out to a couple of senior leaders today, they will say we are looking for more women in senior positions, especially in sales, but we can't find them. To them, my mantra has always been that don't look for exactly the same qualifications that you want or which you have defined. Look for what you want them to do and see within your own organization if there are women who can get onto that role and who can take that challenge. So it is not essential that somebody has to have 10 years of experience with an MBA degree from an MIT or a Harvard or whatever. It could be a woman who has few years of experience but is extremely enthusiastic and has the capability to do sales. So take a risk on someone, be supportive, and you will see the results. So change what you need rather than defining something which is already existing.
One more question for me
Okay.
specifically. What makes a great salesperson?
A lot of things: perseverance,
3 points.
resilience, and the passion for the job. I think passion is the most important, resilience comes next, and the third, persistence. Thank you. You had a comment.
To what Rochelle was saying, I hired a driver to go on an excursion and was gone all day, and found that as I came back, I came out of the vehicle and looked on the back, and it had a sticker that said, "This taxi respects women." And I thought I would like, so I took a picture and I'm sending out on social media all the details about this taxi, because that has value, and our power as communicators to impact the bottom line on companies that promote women it is not to be underestimated. So I would love to connect with an app where I can actually add that in and give that company that kind of referral, since it obviously is a safe place for a woman to be. And then to what you were saying, it was so fascinating to have this school year. I have a 4th grader, and I'm from the States, from Utah. And they offered a very inexpensive coding class. And the coding class was so immediately filled up that they offered 4 more segments of the same class. The classes were at least 50% girls in 4th grade. So a total of 5 coding classes that ran for 8 weeks. And it's fantastic. They love it. They want to be there. They want to stay after and keep doing it. An email was generated towards the end of the school year from the principal, and the email read like this: "Parents, if you want to keep your boys busy this summer, we're doing an extension of the coding class." And I emailed back the principal, who's nearing his 60s, he's probably 65, nearly retired, and I said, "Is the class exclusively for the boys?" And he wrote back and he said, "Well, no, it's for anybody who wants to take it." And it was very interesting to me that when he wanted to offer that out, he assumed that that would only occupy the time of the boys. And so I thought that went to your point about fostering, just having a greater understanding. As more women become principals, they would then recognize the need to frame that offer for the girls as well, because clearly the girls were just as interested in coding.
Well, that might be a good example. Introduce them to that Harvard gender. You might want to introduce them to that Harvard gender bias, because most people who make these statements, they have no idea that they're doing it. They think they're being very friendly, inviting to girls, but it's these intangibles that are just having such a negative effect.
And he's a lovely principal.
Exactly.
Generationally,
Exactly.
you would assume that.
Right. So he might very well benefit from doing that Harvard test and just recognizing, that maybe the environment is not as gender neutral as he thinks it is.
Right. Agreed.
Any more questions?
This is my favorite topic actually, so I'm asking questions. Technology for women, because it's something which stirs me as a woman. See, when I joined my first job, I was not very hands-on with technology, and I was into sales. My first job, 15 years back. And there was this chick who joined along with me, and she was pretty good at computers because she had done some computer course 3 years. So definitely, even if however intelligent or capable we were, but most of the attention and whatever appreciation went to the girl who was technologically more savvy, right? So then that really prompted me, and I just made a promise to myself that I'm not going to let technology come my way. So I tried to be in tune with technology, and today I have 2 startups. I'm planning two more. I don't know coding. I'm not a tech person. But still, I have a question. When I go to forums, business forums, and mentoring workshops and all, where there's tech enterprises are coming up. Out of 40, 50, 60, I hardly see any women. I see like 1 or 2 ladies. They're coming up, but not too many. I mean, so anybody want to discuss on that? But I'm very happy that I'm very excited about it. I'm going to check your app. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, what your experience is the norm. You know, I go to conferences, you know, in my field all the time, and you look around and there's maybe, you know, a few women in the room, and it's still predominantly male. You know, I'm encouraged, you know, by the comment that was made by Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, that's the type. I think we do have some visionary leaders in America who are recognizing that the future, you know, they want the best for the company, they want their best people for the company, and they recognize that probably 50% of those people should be women. So we just all need to work towards change, because change is needed. But unfortunately, that is still, in my opinion, in my experience, being the status quo.
I just want to make a comment on that. The good thing about that, though, if you want to look at like the silver lining, I never have to wait in line in the bathroom at any of these conferences. Like, I mentally think about that. Like, I like walk through and I'm like, yay for me! Because like you'll see a line in the men's bathroom. To your point, like there's just not a lot of women there. So if you're looking for a silver lining, yay! But one day I know I'll have to wait in line. But take what you can get while it's offered.
So I wanted to comment that from my experience, you know, trying to raise money with investors, it's been the same. You know, in California, if 2 25-year-old, there's such a boom in technology, 2 22-year-old guys from Stanford, they walk in and have this business idea, it's very easy for them to walk out with a 1 million check or 2 million check to start something. But for me as a woman, it's not that easy. It doesn't matter if I have experience, if I have a good idea, if I have everything, it's harder. So as a woman, there's gonna be more obstacles, so you have to be more resilient and push more. So, so you're trying to start something, so you have to get very creative. You know, when I tried to raise money, it wasn't possible. So I ended up building the product, the prototype myself. So I had to outsource a team. They built the first product. Then with them, because they were located offshore, there were problems. It was not gonna get finished. I had to travel, be with them 1 month. So, you know, each step of the way for you to have your product come to life, it's more struggle for you as a woman. And mentally, I'm not saying it's fair, but you have to be prepared for it. So once you build something initially, so I would say that you know, it's unfair, but as a woman, you have to work harder. And then once you work harder and you have something to show, then you don't even go because you can expect that it's going to be unfair. So I go in when I do the extra work and the dynamic change, because they've seen that you've built something, you have something, you can do things, and so you have to be unstoppable to make, you know, your dreams. So if you go there's no women, bring your friends. Talk to your friends, you know, connect with other women or entrepreneurs. You hear there's so many, it's a self-selected group. You have to connect with women. You know, there's amazing resources out there, and you just have to find them and not let it get in your way when you want to do something. Yeah. So yesterday there was someone, I think her name is Brenda. She's from Blackfront Ventures. She received an award yesterday, and she started a VC firm. I think it's called Half of the World Holding. So basically, they're funding ventures that are run by women. So it's changing slowly, but I think there's been, you know, overall there's progress, and you have to be optimistic. Yeah.
So I'm just going to add 3 small sentences. One is there is a women's network, especially for entrepreneurs, called We Connect. Maybe you can look at them and join their network, because they do a lot of good programs and they also connect you to some investors. Second one is look for statistics if you're in the tech sector at NASSCOM. NASSCOM also has a separate data on women entrepreneurs in the tech sector, especially product or services, whichever one you want. The third one is, like she mentioned, there are new venture capitalists who are coming up who are specifically focusing on women entrepreneurs. One of them is Vani Khosla. There is one more gentleman, I'm forgetting his name, but it'll come to me, I'll share it with you. So there are a lot of them coming up. You should start getting into those networks, and definitely things will change. Women in technology, if you want to see more of them, go to conferences that are organized by ABI, the Anita Borg Institute's Grace Hopper Celebrations Conference. And it's heartening to see the crowd there. It's thousands and thousands of women, even in India. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Thank you all for the wonderful session.
Thank you very much. Actually, all of you also come, all the audience also please come, so that we get to know who are interested. No, please come, please come.
No, you be assertive in your choice. You say no, you mean no. But you put it there. There you go, peer pressure. We win.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you guys.
Thank you. I was like nodding my head away at everything you were saying.
It was scattered. This
No,
it was a little scattered.
I had 2 other sessions this